just made sure. Yeah. How are you
Yeah,
doing?
I'm doing
Hi,
fantastic.
everyone.
So basically, I think it's a weekday, early morning. So thank you so much for joining in. Most of our consumers are actually like to see the video later. So, but we still love to have this live session because it's just easier, unscripted, on the go. So I just put you and me on the spotlight, and we'll start in a couple of minutes.
Oh, cool.
What brings you here, Scott? Like, do you have a thought in mind, something like that?
So when I was first approached, what I really resonated with, at the time, I was also friends with a person by the name of Miss Fab. And so one of the things about education and development is something that's really important to me. I actually teach our capstone. I develop and teach our capstone course for our graduates from our financial leadership development program. It's a very difficult course. It's about 12 weeks. Uh, and I've run about 350 to 400 people through the program as graduates before they graduate from our leadership development program as far as finance
Mhm.
inside all of Lockheed Martin. And so I have even though teeth of steel from a standpoint of project execution and making a difference of projects around the globe, I have a soft spot as far as giving back to the next generation of learning, why it's important, helping our next generation of leaders understand certain aspects that we have the scars and the marks for that maybe they don't uh, endure. How's that? So to me, education is really important, whether you're, 4 or 5 years old or 45 years old. It it's all about continuous learning and development. And that's the reason why even at 50 years old, I went back to Columbia and
Mhm.
spent 4 years working on a strategy focus at Columbia Business School. And it was simply because it in my line of work, it's really hard to um, solve tomorrow's problems with yesterday's mindset. And it's really important from my perspective that 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 mindset is communicated to almost anyone that I talk with. And then lastly, my eldest son's a doctor. And you so many people talk about, from the time you're 6 until you're 18, or you go to college and you're 22. As a doctor, he has spent 24 of his 30 years of his life
Mm.
educate in an education type environment. I mean, residency is hands-on, but I mean, my perspective to you is there's a reason why the medical profession has the residency programs like they do. And that
Yep.
is because it cuts down on errors, mistakes, and it is a hockey stick from how much you learn from medical school through a residency program. And so to me, it's all part of that entire package of why was I interested? Why am I interested in development and learning? And some of it is selfish, some of it is paternal, but then the last piece of it that I would submit to you is that it's something I think is woefully needed in America.
No, I totally agree with you, Scott, so much. Like, I tell people that usually I ask people that, what skills actually help them succeed in life. And they usually bring up the soft skills, the collaboration, team building. And when I ask them that what age do they think they have got even a mediocre competency on it? So they mention 30s or 40s. And I'm said, isn't it too late? They said, these skills you learn with experience. But I beg to differ there. I think these skills you learn with deliberate practice. If
Yeah.
you leave math or science or English to learn through exposure, you're not going to learn anything in even 100 years.
Mhm.
So we do a
Uh,
lot of deliberate practice of
I
math.
agree. Listen, I agree. I mean, maybe say different. I teach I've done 2 sessions at the Macomb School of Business at the University of Texas.
Hmm.
I wish and this is to your point, I wish someone would have given me that exposure in what I would call MBA business case when I was in the MBA program. I didn't get that. I didn't get to do the competition and understanding how to pitch to executives until
Yes.
I was actually in a Fortune 500 company
Yeah.
versus a more friendly setting in graduate school. So to your point about moving that experience and the soft skills back up to the left of a person's life, critically important to success.
Exactly. And I would love to now introduce Nadine to everyone because she's our special guest today. So Nadine is a CEO of High Quality Education Services, which is dedicated to providing essential educational support to parents with navigating IEP service processes.
Mhm.
And she has a rich 20-year experience in education, including 9 years in special ed. She has empowered learners in a lot of ways. She's embarked on a mission to foster safe
Mhm.
and inclusive environments. And she's a go to expert for parents and educators seeking
Mhm.
guidance. And Nadine was kind enough to invite me to her podcast, and we had a great chat about Tomoclub and my journey. But it got me thinking that I need to know a lot about her and her expertise. And I thought, what better than a play and learn series that we do at Tomoclub? So thank you so much, Nadine, for coming in.
Well, thank you for having me, and thank you, everyone. Um, Let me just say, like you, Scott, I am a lifelong learner. I like
Mhm.
to do research. I love to learn. I love to learn new things, and I try to incorporate that in my classroom. I try to reflect a lot on, what I've done in class, how I've taught my students. How can I be better as a teacher, as an educator, and so I've taught 20 years, um, 9 years, like Avinash mentioned, in special education, and that is my passion. I love it.
Mhm.
And my reason for forming my business is because I saw there was a need. There was a need to educate parents. There was a need to educate teachers, especially like general education teachers, about special education and about
Mhm.
the needs of students in a special education setting, how to create that safe space for them, how to create inclusivity, because a lot of times, like you and I know, if you've ever been in the classroom, whether being a student in the classroom, students who are diverse, who have exceptional needs, are usually excluded. And so, and that doesn't help. That doesn't help in the situation
Mhm.
anyway, because, we all learn differently and they already know that they are learning differently. And so when you exclude them, then that makes it even worse.
Yeah.
So, basically we're doing a collaboration of how do I foster inclusion in the class, what inclusion looks like in the classroom for me, and me helping other teachers,
Mhm.
what it's not, and how can we educate others to have an inclusive classroom, basically, or have an inclusive environment um, for our diverse learners.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah,
All
absolutely.
right, so that's just
Which,
I
God bless you, because listen, I think that some of the the difficultness of public education today is keeping the attention of the students, and and I think that's very difficult even with optimal. If you have a few quote unquote troublemakers, now I was never a troublemaker in school, of course, but it only makes it more difficult, and it makes the teacher's job more difficult. So yeah, I look forward to the conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
so before we jump to our interesting topic, that is creating safe and inclusive spaces for diverse learners, I would love to know, Nadine, from you, what inspired you in the first place to focus on this specific area of education?
Okay, so I was not always a special education teacher. First of all, I have a master's in special education, I have a bachelor's in child development, family relations, and psychology. And initially, I was a business education teacher. That's where I started. But then as I went into the classroom and I noticed that a lot of students, they are lacking the skills they need, and they really want to learn, but it's hard for them to learn. There are challenges, they need support. And so I decided that I would, I would do special education. And when I started in it, I loved it. I mean, I love it. And that is where my passion is, because I'm a believer in the fact that all students can learn. All students, regardless of their other abilities, they can learn. It's just they need the right strategies, they need the right supports, and they need someone who's there, cheering them along, helping them along the way. So that is what what brought me to this, to where I am right now.
So that is truly amazing. And I am so impressed that you have yourself educated so much that you are now imparting it back. But I'm gonna play the devil's advocate here for a while, and I wanna ask you that I understand, but why do you think it's crucial to prioritize diversity in education setup? Because initially there used to be a special ed classes separately, and now there's a lot of
Mhm.
conversation about bringing them together with every kid, and there's a lot of conversation that it slowed down the pace of the entire classroom. So why do you think in the first place that bringing them together is beneficial?
Okay, first of all, let's just talk about what inclusivity means. It
But
means that you are all learners, they're learning side by side, they're in the same classroom, they're learning side by side, they have the same high quality instruction, they have interventions that they're given, and they're given supports. And a lot of times people might say, well, the classroom is slowed down with students who are in there who might have exceptional needs. That's not necessarily true, because from my own experience, a lot of times when a special education teacher is in the classroom and providing supports for students who need that support, there are other students who are there who might not be identified as having exceptional needs or maybe a diverse learner, and they are benefiting. So inclusion is not just benefiting a diverse learner or a special education student. It's actually helping everyone in that classroom, because the more bodies you have in the classroom that's there supporting students, because we know, especially in the public education system, you might have a 30-to-1 ratio. Now, with a 30-to-1 ratio with the teachers, there are a lot of people who are going to fall along the wayside. To
yeah,
be honest, it is. I'm there, been there in those big classrooms. And so when you have more than one specialist in the class who's there providing supports, then that helps all students, not just the special education students, but it helps all students.
no, I totally agree with you. I think I was discussing with another edtech founder, and he's working on the learning loss. Oh, sorry, the learning gaps. And he was mentioning that sometimes a sixth grader might have a learning gap of second grade,
Mm-hmm.
and it's actually the special ed which helps them being open about it. And
Right.
so I have realized, and I've heard it back and forth, that it is helping them fill up those learning gaps which have been existing in kids, to identify them and fill it up. So yeah, I am totally a supporter of inclusivity in that sense. And but you also mentioned about the trauma sensitive practices. I would love to, very less is talked about it, and I myself is a very nascent learner in this. But can you explain that into terms of education, and how do they contribute to creating safer spaces?
Okay, so trauma sensitive practices, basically, it's understanding some of the things that students go through and what they bring to the classroom. So a lot of times students, they might go through a traumatic situation. They have the loss of a loved one, housing. They might have lost their home. A lot of things happen with them. And so they bring these things to the classroom. And so with trauma sensitive practices, social emotional learning, it helps the teachers, it helps the administrators educate them about different situations that might cause a student to be behaving in a certain way. Students, yeah, you have them, be not following directions and things like that, but there are situations where something is going on, and
Yeah.
so being educated in trauma sensitive practices helps the educators, it helps the students, it fosters that positive learning environment for both teachers as well as students. And so that is one of the things also that my business, we provide training, we provide supports on how to incorporate those trauma sensitive practices in the classroom. Yeah.
You just set the place for my next question that I was about to ask, that when you go out and train the educators, what are the most common barriers, or I would say difficulties, you face in creating that or educating them, and how do you overcome them?
One of the biggest barriers is that we don't have time. We do not have time for anything else. We already have the curriculum that we have to be instructing others about, so we don't have the time. And me personally, I had that viewpoint because I'm a person, I believe in, okay, I'm going to provide instructions. I want you to progress. I want you to progress academically. But then I didn't realize that the social and the emotional well-being is so tied into the academics. And after doing a lot of research, Dr. Bruce Perry, he's one of those very, very well-known, that's known for social emotional trauma sensitive practices. I've done a lot of research on his studies. I've come to realize, and even my own personal experience, if you're not feeling your best, if you're not at your best emotionally as well as socially maybe, then you're not going to perform academically. And so this has led me to provide instructions for teachers. It's not a waste of time. It
Yeah.
actually helps. It actually helps you in the long run, because if you're able to create that safe space for your students, they want to do things for you. They want to learn. And so when they come in, you're providing that positive environment for them. Then they're like, yeah, let me do this. You're doing this for me, and I feel so good. Let me do this for you. So as humans, that's how we are. We're social beings. We like feeling that we're included. And so when we have that kind of space, creating in our classroom, then we help our students in the long run.
No, I agree with you. In fact, I've been talking to a lot of teachers, and a lot of teachers, while they're teaching math, science, English, they are doing social emotional learning to some extent.
Mhm.
So most of the administrators come to us and say that, why are you selling a separate curriculum for it? It's an everyday practice. And I totally believe it. But at the same time, I'm a big believer that there has to be a dedicated hour for it, because unless you highlight it, people don't tend to remember it. So
Right.
a lot of things you started doing subconsciously, but when you start mentioning it out and carving out time for it, as you said, the impact is more profound. And this is what has changed. So I was in multiple conferences in the last few months, and to my shock, in one of the conferences there were 120 superintendents, and they did a pre-poll before the conference, and 71% of them wanted an effective SEL curriculum this year. And when I was asking them, what do you mean by effective, they said, where students are actually engaged, and it's a two-way street, the communication is happening, and they can take away the learning outcomes and not just taking a checkbox. So I think that was something that we also felt, that the time sensitivity will always come, but how they can start thinking on the long-term benefits of it, from the attendance point of view, from behavior issues, from mental well-being, which in turn will impact the academics. And once the superintendents are wrapping their head around it, they are taking it very seriously, for sure.
And
And
just to add to that, oh, I'm
yeah,
sorry.
go ahead, go ahead.
Just to add to what you were saying about the social emotional curriculum, a lot of the social emotional curriculum that I've come across, it's kind of like just having a checkbox. Like a district might have a social emotional learning package because it's a requirement, but it doesn't help. It doesn't help the student. It doesn't help the school environment in the long run. You want something that's going to be effective. And I think that's what Tomoclub does, which I like.
Yeah. And now coming to that very next question, which a lot of educators might be interested to listen to is what are some specific strategies or techniques that you can mention that educators can use to create that inclusive classroom environment, or the supportive classroom environment?
Okay, so I'm going to talk about what inclusive looks like, and then I'm going to say what it's not.
Okay.
Because a lot of times, we might be doing things and we're not aware of them. So I'm going to talk about what does inclusive mean. It means to promote a positive environment. You want to promote a positive environment for all your students, all your learners. They feel valued. If I'm in a classroom and I don't feel like what I'm doing is valued, I'm not going to want to be in there, and I'm going to cause some trouble. So you want them to feel valued. You want to connect with your students. You want to celebrate their differences. They already know that they learn differently. So we want to celebrate those differences, letting them know it's okay, because we all learn differently. Someone can be telling me something, I hear you, but I really don't understand completely until I see it. So we're visual, we're auditory, we have to be doing things with our hands, learners, hands-on. So you have to celebrate those differences in your students. You also want to support small group instructions as well as individual instructions. That's some of the things that I did in my classroom, or have done in my classroom. Small groups, those, you're able to give that one-on-one instruction to your students. Individual when it's possible. You might not have a whole lot of time in the day, but if you can provide that, that's good. Co-planning with teachers, working cooperatively with teachers, the special education teacher, the general education teacher, working cooperatively for the betterment of the student. Each student should feel like they're a valued member. You want to give those affirmations, letting them know that they're valued in the classroom. Give them those praise, those affirmations. I do that all the time. Using different materials, different activities. I would love to play games in my classroom. So doing those things, encourage interaction with your students, making sure that you focus on the strengths of your student and not their weaknesses. Celebrate those strengths that they have, and work on those weaknesses, because we all have them, but you want to celebrate those and highlight the strengths. And you want to keep up to date, because I make sure that I keep up to date with best practice strategies for helping special education students, and general education students, and also keeping up with technology, because a lot of our students, they love technology. They know more about technology than we do. So keeping up with those things actually help to promote that inclusive environment. And let me just say what it is not. An inclusive environment is not segregating, like taking the special education students, putting them in another classroom. We want to have what is called least restrictive environment. So yes, they might have to be in a resource setting where they're going to get maybe reading or math focus, but then they should also be integrated with other classes for maybe enrichment or other extracurricular activities. You want to make sure that they're integrated, they are socialized, or they get a chance to socialize with other students. You don't want to exclude students, or special education students, because of their differences in their needs. We don't want to exclude them, because behaviorally they might be different, or academically they're different. We do not want to exclude students. We always want to include them, because they already feel different. We don't want to add to that. And also make sure that you provide supports, a lot of supports. You want to use the information from a specialist, the special education teacher, or any other specialist that might be supporting that student. You want to make sure that you get information from them and utilize those information or that information in your classroom. So I hope that helps.
No, those are actually pretty good, solid points, which I'm gonna make sure mention specifically in the caption too, so that people can have a quick takeaway. And now coming to that, I would love to know some success stories. I think we listen to all these terminologies back and forth, and that is also a problem with education, that everybody end up saying the same thing. And so it's difficult for educators and school administrators to decide and choose who actually mean it. And the best way to explain it is through success stories. So if you can share me some stories where your practices or your exercise, your activities were implemented and had a positive outcome.
Okay, so I will give you like two experiences. So I've had well, myself and a co-teacher and we worked with a group of students, and we did this for like 3 years. And those students, what we do is we make sure that we celebrate the good things that they do in class, and we focus on the positive and giving them feedback, and working with them in small groups. That led to our students progressing. 80% of our students did well in reading as well as math. They, and when I say that they exceeded, they scored like double digits, 45 points, adding to their, and this was actually state test assessment that they did. But creating that environment of we're together, we're a family, that helped them to feel safe, and that helped them to progress academically. That's just one. Another one, I had a student, and he was not basically in the class, he did not want to participate in a math class. And so we had trainings with his parent, or we had meetings with his parent, and we asked, what can we do to help you as a student to progress? And the parent did not know. I didn't know at that time, because I was like, I thought I was teaching, I was doing what I was supposed to do. But then he loved playing games. And so I incorporated that in my lessons, and that student actually progressed so well, to the point that it was elementary and he went to middle school, and this traveled with him basically. And so when he went to middle school, he excelled. And so, taking that time to create and learn about our students and create that environment, it does help academically in the long run.
No, I totally agree with you. Sometimes I tell people that games are a universal language. And when we are growing up, or actually in everyday life, we do have a lot of game mechanics at play, whether they're incentive, rewards, penalties, or collaboration to achieve something. There are a lot of game mechanics around us, which keeps on motivating us and keeps us engaged. So I'm a big believer of course, game-based learning, and that's what Tomoclub is also based about. But I love that fact that you brought it up, and now you actually have success stories who are replicating it. But something that bothers me with these things are the scalability issue. That if you are working with a certain set of students or certain set of educators in training them, how do you make sure that it percolates year on year in the same school and further also?
Okay, so could you repeat that?
So how do you make it scalable? Like if you have done certain practices, what are the checks in place which keeps it sustaining?
Okay, so job embedded training. So professional development is done, and you're given the best practices to incorporate in the class, but then I show you how to incorporate that in the class, and then you're given feedback, and then we're working together to make sure that this happens in your classroom. So maybe doing it in one or two classrooms, and then moving from there. But you're not left on your own to put those things into practice that you're being trained about. I actually show you how they're done.
So hands-on,
and then do a follow-up.
So just like Scott said, the apprenticeship or the internship or the live ops like in residency which happens, that is super important to sustain the learning outcomes of that.
Yes.
Now, you already touched upon this particular point, but I want to highlight it again, is about the technology piece. How much do you think that has an impact on inclusion? And if you come up with some examples, that will be even better.
Okay, so technology is a language that all of us we speak, especially for the younger generation, that's what they speak, technology. And so incorporating it in the classroom, maybe using it for games or whatever activities you might be doing, you're doing a discussion. Because I know with one of the school districts that we worked in, is there's Canva or Canvas. It's Canvas. It's a platform, and so students are able to they're able to do discussions on there. They're able to work collaboratively in groups on there. And so technology is important because we're moving in the time of technology, and so we have to have that in our classrooms. And most teachers, when they're being assessed, that is one of the things that they're assessed on. How well do they use technology in the classroom, or just media in general in the classroom?
Yeah, no, I think for me, the Google Drive, whether it's Google Docs, Google Sheets, the collaborative angle that I have figured out in the last few years has been so important and so pivotal that I could never go back. Like the amount of collaboration you can do and working together is phenomenal. And that is just one type of technology. Of course, Zoom is also one which is connecting us right now. And we were forced to do it very quickly during the pandemic. We were forced to upgrade ourselves. But I think thanks to the one-to-one device mandate in most of the school district now, I think that access is now sorted. The infrastructure has been sorted. And now it's about the applications which builds on top of it. And you hear that phenomenal stories of kids using this technology to the right direction and able to develop certain solutions, certain applications, websites, able to create fundraising campaigns, learning about how to manage teams, and the whatever we see that's going to happen in the near future, the kids are already doing it, which is super impressive to see.
And just to add, during like the pandemic, having technology in the classroom, it actually helps because some students, they might not have access, as difficult as it might sound, but you have students who might not have access to technology at home. Sometimes they might have a phone, but then they might not have access to other technology. So exposing them, with different forms of technology in the classroom actually helps them, and it helps them in the long run.
Yeah, I'll tell you something which is very embarrassing, but it's true that earlier I thought equity or having equal access was in the lines that okay, everyone has a computer, everyone has a internet, that is equitable. But I was big time mistaken, and I'm glad with Tomoclub I got more understanding about it. It's about if a product is able to cater to kids of different uh, backgrounds as well as different learning gaps. So it's not only meant for the bright kids, but it's meant for everyone. And if a product or a technology is made keeping that in mind, then it's actually equitable and then it's actually effective at a big scale. And that was a big learning for me. And we make sure that we were incorporating that while designing and developing our own games and product, that it should not only be for those extrovert bright kids who tries to take over the limelight, and other ones just want to get out of it or just want to shy away. But it should be in a way that makes everyone feel it's a fair field. And that is the biggest challenge of technology when I see in education specifically. And we are trying to solve that with Tomoclub.
Okay, good. And that's what inclusion looks like. Everyone, regardless of background, regardless, they feel that they are a part of the classroom.
Yep, absolutely. So this is super exciting, super fiery conversation back and forth. Is there anything that you want to share more about it or about your company?
Okay, well, if I provide supports for, like I mentioned, educators, general and special education teachers, especially those special education teachers in years 1 to 3. I provide coaching services and job embedded training, like I mentioned before. And if you do want to get in contact with me, I can leave you my contact information. I have a website where you can find resources there free, as well as the resources that you can purchase. So I'm going to leave that information with you so that you can add it as well. And I'm on all the platforms. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Instagram. Facebook, you name it. So if and a lot of times I give important information about special education. So if you want to follow me on any of those platforms, you can as well. Just
Perfect.
look for
Thank you so
Nadine
much, Nadine.
Atkins.
Yes, I'll definitely add that in the caption. It was super exciting, super quick conversation, and I'm sure it was filled up with a lot of ideas for the viewers. And thank you so much for joining in.
Okay, thank you so much for having me. All right.
Take care. Have a good day.
Okay, you too.
Bye, guys. Thank you for joining in.
You bet.